Welcome back to the Opposition podcast number 32. Again, information that Rukshan never seems to know, but that's why I'm here. Rukshan, how you doing, mate?
I'm doing good, Avi. And actually, I remembered it was 32. I told you it was 32. So I'm actually getting a lot better at this. And I make a point of actually knowing now which episode we're up to. So, yeah, good to be here. And I think it's going to be an interesting show based on, what's happening in the world right now, especially the issue that we're going to be talking about. So,
absolutely. And a reminder to all our viewers, welcome to another episode. We are going to stream on all the main platforms the beginning of the show, then exclusively for the Rebel News Plus members, those of you who support, help us ensure that we keep the lights on. Those of you part of our little family, you can join us to the end of the show at theopposition.show, in which you have an opportunity to also press the blue button to join the show and actually join me and Rukshan in having a chat, and maybe even our guest. Tonight we have a couple of guests, in fact. First, we'll bring in our first guest, Brian, a friend of mine. Brian, who are you? Tell people where you are and where they can find you.
Well, I'm Brian of London, but I'm not in London. I'm in Tel Aviv. I left London 16 odd years ago, and I live in Tel Aviv, north of Tel Aviv. I'm only pretty much on X and a thing called Hive, and I am Brian of London on X.
We've got a lot to unpack today, big day. In fact, we've got another guest here as well. I'm going to bring him on for the beginning. Ishay, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us. For those who don't know, you can quickly break down who you are, where you are, and where people can find you.
Sure. My name is Ishay Fleischer. I'm the spokesman for the Jewish community of Hebron. That's in Judea, Israel. So I'm a so-called settler, but in fact, we believe that we're the folks that are building up the Jewish state and living in the places where bad guys don't want us to live, but are the heartland of the Jewish people. And you could always find me at yishayfleischer.com.
So I guess, Ishay, starting with you, because we only have you for a few minutes, what is the deal? We've got here on Jerusalem Post a breakdown. I'm not sure if this is the final deal because it's not actually official. What are we looking at? And from your perspective, is it a good deal?
Okay, so we're looking at a deal where Israel gives about 1,000 prisoners or more, hardened prisoners, murderers, to Hamas, and receives about 33 or 34 hostages. But also agrees to pull out of the two main roads that bisect the Gaza Strip. Gaza Strip is about 400 square kilometers. It's in the southwest of Israel, and there's really two roads. There's the Netzarim Road, which is kind of in the middle, and then there's towards the south with the border with Sinai. There's the Rafah crossing and the Philadelphia corridor, which are basically on the border of the Sinai, Egyptian Sinai, through which most of the smuggling takes place. So Israel has agreed to pull out on one level or another from these two important roads that have been secured in the past year plus of fighting. Look, there's a lot of pressure in Israel, and there's been a big campaign to release the hostages. And there are some people who see that our battle is specifically to liberate these hostages. People like myself don't see it that way. We see a broader phenomenon, which is this is the opportunity to crush the jihadism that has built up on our borders and to secure our borders for the next century, as opposed to allowing them to once again build up the military infrastructure that they've managed to build up on our borders and into our cities. So to me, it's a bad deal because from the get-go, I don't think we should make a deal at all with terrorists. We should destroy them. Remember in the 90s, they used to say, like, we don't negotiate with terrorists. Well, suddenly we're negotiating with terrorists. And to me, the correct outcome would have been the annihilation of Hamas as an organization. This is the organization that has made many attacks on us, culminating with the October 7th attack. And now they're going to be strengthened They're going to be given more prisoners, more potential leaders of the next generation of Hamas leadership. And this is not the outcome that I would have wanted to see at all. Not at all. What I want to see is the destruction of Hamas, the reoccupation, if you want to use that word, of Gaza, and the governance of Gaza by Israel, both militarily and in a civilian manner as well.
Do you think most Israelis agree? Do most Israelis want to take Gaza back again?
Well, most Israelis, we have a right-wing government, right? We have a right-wing government, so the majority of Israelis voted for a nationalistic way of thinking. And also, by the way, I never said that I represent most Israelis. I represent a nationalist way of thinking, and I represent what I think is a rational way of thinking, because you have to remember that what led to October 7th is the 2011 hostage deal for the one Israeli soldier, Gilad Shalit. We released 1,000 terrorists, and those terrorists became the leadership of Hamas, including Sinwar. So, it's not. It's I don't know if I have the majority with me or not. I don't know, but there's certainly a loud voice in Israel that thinks this is a bad deal. There's a voice on the other side which says,
you say it's a right-wing government. Why are they agreeing to such a deal? It seemed bizarre. Sitting here in Australia, I'm looking at the deal. It does look like a bad deal. The only thing I can think of as to the reason, you know how I know it's a bad deal, is Hamas is celebrating. The entire anti-Israel movement is celebrating. The only people who seem to be somber are Jews around the world and Israel, and they're being mocked for it. So why is Israel agreeing to this now? The only justification I could think of is they're buying time to get into the Trump presidency. Trump has talked real tough. They want to get a few hostages back, and then they're going to come in after the ceasefire period, and they're going to finish the war as they promised to finish Hamas in the beginning. Is that what they're doing? And is it really worth it with 1,300 or whatever amount of terrorists are going to release back?
Avi, it's not always easy to explain sociological phenomena, in a program like this. To understand Israeli decision making is it's not always the math that is logical that is followed. Israel, in many ways, has a consensus style government. We have a coalition style government, and that means that there's a lot of different parties that sit within a so-called right-wing government. Israel is a family country, which therefore the hostages, it hurts more than it might hurt in a country that's less familial. Israel is a country that has not issued, our leadership has not issued a grand vision of how they see the borders of Israel. We have borders that are not set yet. So to me, I already knew that this kind of thing was coming because Netanyahu never issued a vision for how he saw the future of Gaza in the first place. It just was like, we're fighting against the bad guys, but he never said we're going to retake it. He never said we're going to repopulate
it. But he did make it clear that he did make it clear that victory was no Hamas and all the hostages home. Well, according to this deal, if this really is the final ceasefire, there is Hamas at the end of the day. Yes, they've lost a lot of their capabilities. Iran's weakened. The leadership's gone, but Hamas is still there.
That's right. And the Hamas is still there, and by the way, not all the hostages are home either.
In addition, so it can't be. It's certainly not a victory for Israel. So why are they agreeing to it? That's what I'm not understanding here.
Maybe there's the Trump factor and the Biden factor, and maybe there's the potential Saudi normalization deal. There's all these other things. But again, I say to you, when you don't issue a clear and total vision, then you're not clear what you're fighting about. And you get these other pressures of the hostage stuff, and you're like, okay, I'll get something. Maybe he's tired. Maybe he thinks the army is tired. And for whatever reason, this is actually the modus in which Netanyahu has operated in the past. Netanyahu is, on the one hand, a great leader, and he's going to go down as one of Israel's, most important historic leaders on the one hand. On the other hand, Israel sometimes bumbles from the middle, allows other forces to boss it around. Maybe Trump wants quiet right now so he could claim that he's shut down wars. Personally, I wish Trump did not say there'll be hell to pay if the hostages aren't released. I wish he would have said, I'm just going to back Israel, and Israel's going to do what's best for its security. I wish that he didn't say that he's going to get involved in some way, because then he now suddenly has some kind of political promises that he has to fulfill. I wish he wouldn't have said that at all. I don't want him to get involved in our business. I want him to say, listen, I support Israel in its fight. And by the way, that's what Rubio said. That's what Pete Hegseth said. That's the best way to look at it. But the minute he said, I'm putting my name on the release of these hostages, it already went south from there. I hope, Avi, and the rest of this nice crew that you have, I hope that we indeed are seeing this as just a kind of middle stage. Here's the best case scenario, that indeed this is just a prisoner slash hostage exchange, and the war goes on as it did earlier on in the war. We also had another prisoner. We also had another exchange, short ceasefire. So I hope that indeed it's not a long-term stoppage of the war. But even if it is, we have to understand the war goes on. Hamas is still in Gaza. Hamas is in Judea and Samaria, where I live. And by the way, if anybody wants to know if this is a good deal or not, I can tell you that the mosques around here and the Arab communities around here are celebrating this, meaning to say they see this as a victory for jihadism and a weakening of Israel. So if you think that it's an indication, if your enemies are celebrating, if that's an indication that you won or lost, I personally think it is. I think that one of the ways that you know that you won is when your enemies are crying and not celebrating.
Sure, sure. But if it does turn out to just be the hostage, the short ceasefire hostage for prisoners deal, is it worth it?
From my perspective, it's not worth it at all. And from my perspective, the way to win this war is to stop feeding our enemies.
Sure,
but feeding our enemies from day one.
If the war continues after the fact and Israel manages to successfully mission accomplish wipe Hamas out of control of Gaza, but they manage through this step to secure, I think they're saying it's 23 or 24 live hostages, which they may not have gotten at the end. Could it not possibly be worth it?
If you think that this war is about the hostages, then it might be worth it. I never thought from day one that it was about the hostages. I thought the hostages were just an element of the war against Israel. Hamas has said from the get-go that this was their strategy in order to weaken Israel. I never thought from day one that this was about the hostages, and I argued that we should fight this war as though there are no hostages, as though they are dead. And if anybody comes out alive, then that's a miracle and that's a gift. But this is not about the hostages. This is about the destruction of Hamas and that force that is preparing war against us. Listen, I want to tell you something.
A lot of people listening to that, like, if I, as a parent, if it was my kid that was a hostage, or if it was your kid as a hostage, would you say the same thing? Would you make the same argument? The hostages are irrelevant. Obviously, Israel looks at the hostages. Israeli society looks at each hostage as so valuable that they're willing to swap. What is the ratio? 1 to 50, I think it is, or 1 to 30,
1 to 30 and 1 to 50, 1 to 30 for civilians, 1 to 50
and Israel's always been like that. That whenever they've done something like this, or at least I think last Gilad Shalit was even bigger.
That's right.
So that's how valuable Israeli life is to the Israeli population. Is it? Saying that the hostages are kind of irrelevant. Would you say that if it was one of your kids, Chas v'shalom?
I probably wouldn't. But that's not how decisions are to be taken. The enemy understands what you just said and is using that to their advantage. They want to make total war against Israel, and they made a tactical decision that one of the ways to weaken Israel and to get what they want is through taking of hostages. It's really a question of a long-term approach. It's short-sighted to see this war is about releasing these hostages when what we're doing now is allowing for Hamas to be able to take hostages in the future. I'm concerned about hostages, i.e. those hostages that will be taken next time. because you are now empowering Hamas to continue to have world support, to have jihadist support, to hold on to Gaza, to build their tunnels. So, you asked me the question, if I was a parent, okay, you're a parent, you have to secure the safety of your child, but that's not how a state makes policy decisions. We've got to look at the long term, and the long term here is this deal gives Hamas strength, and therefore people will die in the long run. So that's the way I'm thinking about it in terms of policy decisions. So it's not to be cold or cold-hearted, but remember, we've already had hundreds of soldiers killed in the effort to liberate these soldiers, meaning to liberate these hostages, meaning to say these hostages will cost more lives. The return of prisoners that are hardened terrorists will cost more lives in the future. So, you have to sometimes take what would seem like a cold approach, but it's not cold, because it's concerned about the future of our children. And I want to tell you, my brother is a videographer here in Israel, and he was interviewing one of these hostage parents. And after the camera was turned off, the parent said to my brother, I wish that they would just tell me that my son is like a kadosh, is like a holy, is like a martyr, but they'll do everything to destroy these people so that they'll never be able to do it again. Meaning to say that we can't fight a war on the terms that the enemy wants us to fight. That the enemy is smart and wants us to fight and to weaken us, and they're getting what they want in this war. We can't have that.
Yujay, thanks for your time. I know you got to run. I hope you're wrong. I hope that I hope that Hamas actually doesn't gain out of it, because after all, Israel actually does finish the job and mission accomplished, and all this is a one stop on the way where we managed to save at least 23 of the hostages that I can't imagine what they've been through in the last almost 15 months now.
Avi, I want you to know that I hope I'd be happy if you were right. Experience shows us that returning terrorists in the end, backfires. But I want you to also remember, Avi, for me, Hamas is not something far away. I live here. I have to, after this interview, I got to get driving to Hebron, where I work. It's a Hamas-controlled city. I have to live with these people. Yeah. I have to live. This is a real thing.
You know what's interesting? Whenever I get into debates on the streets here about Hamas, and then they always bring up the fact that in the West Bank, why is Israel attacking places in the West Bank? There's no Hamas in the West Bank. And I often think about your area, and people don't realize that even though the West Bank is officially ruled by the Palestinian Authority, there is actually Hamas on the ground in the West Bank as well. And your Hebron isn't it controlled by Hamas kind of local gangs or something similar to that?
Hamas is the main spiritual mindset of Hebron. And I want you to remember that the Palestinian Authority and Hamas are two sides of the same coin. It's just a different presentation, but it's really the same damn thing. They both are committed to the annihilation of the Jewish state. And remember, the PA, the Palestinian Authority, is paying the Hamas terrorists of October 7th. So they're really in cahoots. It's one and the same thing, and splitting those hairs is to our detriment because it confuses us. The bottom line, they're the same thing. And so all I mean to say is, when you ask me as if I was a parent to one of these hostages, I am a hostage. I am a parent to this, because my children today, literally this morning, took buses all around here, around this area, and I have no doubt that the terrorists today are emboldened. So today was literally a day where my wife and I were concerned whether we should send our kids out to school. So to us, the strengthening of Hamas is a very real thing. It's not about some hostages in Gaza. It's about my kids this morning. So that's a reality that we face, and therefore we believe that it's time to terminate these people, terminate this ideology, push back against it. And I'll just want to finish with this. October the 7th is a horrific massacre, but it's also an opportunity. It's an opportunity to have policy change, to think outside of the old box of calcified thinking. It's time for policy change. And the Trump administration is an opportunity for policy change. If we're going to keep doing the same old, then we really have not utilized this crisis and this opportunity to its fullest. And I do hope that Israel will start, having a wake up through this process towards a stronger policy, one, by the way, which the Arabs will respect, one which the Saudis will respect, one which will bring regional stability. A strong Israel means more decencies and more rights for more people and more security stability for this whole region.
Thank you, Yishai.
Thank you. Thank you very much for letting me be with you.
Brian, a lot there to unpack. What do you make of everything Yishai just said?
Well, this isn't going to be one of those opposition podcasts where you bring on another guest who then disagrees with the first one, because I'm pretty much there with him in spirit. I don't live in Hebron, but I've visited with Yishai before. Everything he says is correct. Perhaps I'll delve into this mindset of Israelis, because I do live in, I live in the liberal land. I live in the heart of, on the fringes of the left wing Tel Aviv bubble,
the gay capital of
and
Middle East.
Yeah, gay. Everything is, Israel. So it's hard for people, but it's like for Americans, it's the difference between, the state, Upper East Side or Upper West Side New York and rural Ohio. It's Israel is really politically split, but I mean, ever since October the 7th, a great many more people are very much more realistic about who it is and what we are fighting against. And Isha is correct. I'm also a hardliner to a degree. I don't see much difference between the Palestinian Authority and Hamas. It's just a branding difference. It's all the same underlying ideology. They all teach their kids to hate Jews. We've got generations. We gave up schools. Part of Oslo, back in the mid-90s, 1993, we gave the Palestinian Authority, which was Yasser Arafat at the time, we gave them control of the schools and the mosques, and we allowed them to teach whatever they wanted to their kids. And when we look in the textbooks that UNRWA, this United Nations agency, use, when we look at those, the examples in the maths textbooks are, if I've got 20 Jews in front of me and I kill 15, how many are left to kill? Those are literally in their textbooks. We can't expect that to change. And so, we've fought now 15 months or whatever it is. And this thing of the hostage families, they make an enormous amount of noise. They have their demonstrations non-stop in Tel Aviv, not far from me. The neighbor downstairs goes to them. Sometimes my wife goes to them. But you can't help but feel for them. But as Yishai says, we cannot run this country and the security of all of us based on that. And this negotiating with terrorists is just a bad thing, full stop. And we've been forced into it, maybe by our own weaknesses. We don't have the military-industrial power that we should have had. We decided under various premiers, including Netanyahu, to rely on America too much. So, they've had us in a chokehold ever since October the 7th. We haven't got the bombs that we need. So now we're starting to make them. It's all a big... I'm trying to be confusing because I want to convey to you the internal confusions that everyone feels. We all plant ourselves on one point in this, but it's not easy. And the hostages it's always been there. There are two massive strengths that Hamas have exploited. Number one actually is our unwillingness to kill their civilians deliberately. And number two is the hostage thing. They know that those are the two greatest weaknesses we have. We will do almost anything to get hostages back, and we will do almost anything to avoid unnecessary civilian death. So that's what they use. They bury everything under civilians, and they want the pictures. And it's worked. We have failed utterly in this cognitive war, in the war that you fight on the streets in Melbourne. All of those people who, after all this time, and after we see the pictures from Syria of what was going on in their prisons, nobody ever got upset over that. Nobody gave a shit. But every week they're out there on the streets of Melbourne, Sydney, London, New York. They're out there marching with their hate-filled flags and their slogans of destruction. I'm a word salad today. It's all I can hope is that the deal isn't as bad, or that we don't go as far along the deal as it's left to be.
Let's look at let's see what the phases are. So the key terms of the possible. This is from the Jerusalem Post. Phase 1, 33 hostages released. Well, this is old because I think they confirmed
it's
already.
23 alive is the last.
Yeah, 23 alive. So this is from earlier today, but they haven't updated their site yet. IDF begins staged withdrawal, keeping a Gaza security perimeter. Terrorists with life sentences to be released, excluding October 7 Nakba fighters. Last 42 days, some IDF presence in the Philadelphia corridor. Okay, that's the phase we're talking about on Sunday.
I do not, and the other thing I'll note is that when I woke up this morning, I'm still seeing posts on X that Netanyahu has not gone in front of the cameras and said this deal is done. Yeah, and he has not posted on X this deal is done. Everybody else,
I can't see him backing away now when both Biden and Trump are fighting over who takes the credit for it. So
is he just waiting for?
I can't see him backing away, but I can see Hamas. If Hamas have not agreed, and I think Philadelphia is. I mean, the one thing I've seen from Netanyahu is saying Philadelphia is not going to be left alone.
Sure. Look, these are the terms that are being published without like you said, there hasn't been an official statement from government, and no one's got the official terms. In fact, I think he made the point that he's not going to put anything out until it's signed by all parties. Mm-hmm. But let's say that this is generally the terms. I can see phase 1 happening. Sure, that's for now. I can't see phase 2 talks or more hostage releases and further withdrawals start on day 16. Security protocols for Palestinian returnees to northern Gaza. What they're saying also is that the prisoners being released, from what I understand, is ones with no blood on their hands. Is that right? So it's like
no. The first one I saw numbers of 200 murderers.
200.
Okay. And I've already seen. Look, the prisoners. It used to be that releasing these prisoners was the worst thing we could possibly do.
You know what I love is, look at this comment. I love the internet where Israel already broke the ceasefire. Tell the pro-Palestinian people that are posting on the comments, you need to wait till you need to wait till Sunday to publish your lies about the breach of ceasefire, because it hasn't even started yet. It hasn't even been officially agreed. We're just breaking down what the news is, which overwhelmingly I would say people seem to be excited by it because Rukshan.
Well, at least the international community seems, at least the leaders of the international world seem to be notching it up as the win in the right direction. But I think overall, my perception of this is, I know obviously based on the comments that Trump has made over the last couple of weeks, you would have thought that all the hostages would be released. And I don't really prescribe to this thing where you can't really negotiate with terrorists, and you can't really have a ceasefire with a terrorist organization because you can never tell what they're going to do next. It's never worked throughout history. I don't see it working this time. But the one thing that this does do, based on all the international pressure that's been put on Israel by almost all of the international community, is that I think the spotlight is now on Hamas or whatever the leadership is in Gaza when it comes to the other hostages. I mean, what is the excuse now that we're going to hear from Hamas when it comes to the rest of the hostages in terms of releasing them? If they're going to be using them as this bargaining chip, and there is a ceasefire, there is no incursions by Israel after Sunday, for instance, what is the excuse going to be of everyone else for them to keep these civilian hostages? Mostly, the first instance of it, we're not dealing with a traditional military, country or an army in that sense. So from the onset of all of this, we're dealing with a terrorist organization for the mere fact they took civilians as hostages to negotiate with. I mean, no other country in the West would most likely accept these type of terms. So it's very interesting to see how it's playing out. But at least now, I think the West really has to put pressure on to have the rest of these hostages, whether they're dead or alive, the bodies, or just to come clean with all of it. Because I think if that doesn't happen, Trump, based on all the comments that he's made, he really has to step into it and go through with the way that he's been speaking, because it does look bad on him. Right now, I feel like the Biden administration, the Trump administration, both are notching this up as some type of diplomatic foreign win, and that's why they're fighting.
But I feel like Trump's leaving enough room here to be
he's leaving room
to be able to go after the fact. If past phase one, if it doesn't work out, he can just say, well, that was Biden's stupid deal. And yes. I feel so. This is my prediction from it. I might be totally wrong. I think the only thing that pushed this through now so quickly was the fact that Trump said there better be a deal by the time I'm in, or all hell is going to break loose, because they just, whether he was actually going to do anything or not, it was the unpredictable nature of Trump that made Hamas go, oh crap, let's not provoke Donald Trump into doing something crazy in Gaza on day one. So it's kind of Hamas buying time. And then from the Trump administration perspective, it's also kind of buying time. I can understand the argument where a lot of Israelis would say it's a bad deal, like Yeshai sitting here saying it's a bad deal because, how many is it? Is it 1,300? How many prisoners was it? Does it even say here?
Does it say how many? It's going to be 1,300 to
1,300.
It depends on how many. It depends on how many hostages in the end or bodies they send back. Because
let's go with 1,300. So it's an extremely high toll, but I guess that's the compromise to buying that time for kind of almost everyone involved. So, look, I can't see this being the end of the war because they haven't reached the objectives. There are still hostages. Hamas is still in power. The Australian government, even the Prime Minister, the crazy Prime Minister here that has almost sided with Hamas half the bloody war, and every even he's saying that the future government of the future government of Gaza cannot include Hamas, which I was shocked to hear him, which is a pretty strong statement to make. He is coming into an election now. Again, somebody that is, kind of shares the same sort of language as Trump when it comes to Israel. But so even Australia's not accepting a future of Hamas. Even the leftist Australian government is not accepting a future government, saying it publicly, a future government of Gaza being Hamas. So I just cannot see the war ending because there's no way Hamas is going to agree to step down and surrender. Not all the hostages are back, so you're going to have still another 60 something hostages. So I do not see this. Am I wrong? Am I reading this wrong, Brian?
Okay, let's sort of go a bit bigger. We're still in a war with Iran. The Houthis woke me up the night before last, and a gigantic piece of one of the your people, exactly. It's your fault.
The Yemenites should stick to making food, and that's it. Beyond that,
I want Jahannam falling from the sky, not missiles.
Yeah, go on.
Nobody knows what Jahannam is. And so the Houthis, and apparently now the Houthis have immediately said, "Oh, we're going to stop shooting." But still, they need to be punished. They've been shutting shipping lanes for a year and a half. They really need to be hit. And Israel can't do that. We just, we can fly down there. We can spend 2.5 weeks planning a mission, fly with tankers and 20 planes, and basically symbolically bomb their ports. But that's not a war. You can't fight. We can't fight a war 2,000 kilometers away. America's really the only power projector. The Russians, even the Chinese, they can't do what America can do. Iran is still sitting there with nuclear facilities. And I want to tell you a little story. If I can see something going on in the background with Netanyahu, I think it's this. We just released, like a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, we told the world about this operation that the IDF did in Syria in September, before the pagers and before the assassination of Nasrallah, and long before Syria, long before Assad fell. The IDF flew with 120 special forces, who, by the way, half of them were reserves, which blows my mind that they've got like 35-year-old reservists who go back, and then they're special forces, and they go and do like one of the most amazing raids Israel's ever done, by the sounds of things. We fly up, and it's northern Syria. We have to fly up the coast in helicopters, 4 big helicopters, dozens of fighter jets covering the area. We bomb the whole surrounds to kind of act as a decoy. And then these 4 helicopters fly in from the coast between a Russian naval base and a Russian air base, flying in at 60 meters altitude, where anybody with an RPG seeing these helicopters go by at 3 a.m. could take a pot shot at them. Each helicopter's got 50 or 60 people in it. They land. They spend 30 minutes breaking the door down to like a mountain. They go into the mountain where there's a rocket factory, and they place charges on the rocket fuel mixing equipment, which are these things called planar mixers. They're also the same things that we blew up in Iran when we bombed Iran a few months ago. And the reason we had to go there and do it on the ground was clearly this thing's built in a mountain, and we couldn't do it from the air. And what that tells me is that this little missile factory was built for the Syrians by Iran to supply missiles to Hezbollah. And whatever they built in Syria is going to be like a kindergarten compared to what they've got in Iran. The number of people guarding it, the size of the facilities, the depth under the mountains, those kind of. And what this tells me is that, yeah, we can fly with helicopters to Syria. The geography. It's tiny, this place. You can fly up the coast for half an hour and then turn right and go in. We can't do that to Iran. The last time anybody tried to fly helicopters into Iran was Carter trying to rescue their hostages from Tehran, and that ended in a catastrophe in the desert. Nobody is going to be able to put ground forces next to the Iranian nuclear facilities. And the simple fact is, nobody except the Americans has got the bombs and the B-52s and the B-2s and whatever else they've got that's new to blow up Iran's nuclear facilities that are buried underground. Israel doesn't have the ability to do it. Well, we do, probably, maybe. But nobody wants to talk about the one way in which Israel could do it. And so the only thing I can think going on in the background is that we are trading now, hopefully for just a temporary ceasefire to get back 23 living people and some bodies. And we will go back to war in Gaza. We might have to go back to war in Lebanon, though it looks like Hezbollah are really kind of unable to recover. But the big thing is we still have to take care of a nuclear missile from Iran. We can't let that happen. And only America has got the firepower that can be flown around the world to do it.
I tend to agree. I don't know exactly what. I couldn't begin to guess what it is, but I feel like there is a behind-the-scenes agreement between Trump and Bibi, and he says, "Look, agree to these terms now, so the world can say, look at Trump even before taking office, already securing a ceasefire, and I promise to." And Iran makes sense just because it's quieting down the Gaza thing, because he really wants the Gaza thing to wind down, and his justification for it is essentially, if we get rid of the real threat and the ones funding the threat that's in Gaza, then why are you spending all your effort and your soldiers and the world PR all to fight the middleman, when really the fight is up the top, and I'll help you take out the top? I guess that is plausible. I do feel there is a behind the scenes agreement between Trump and Bibi, because none of it makes sense otherwise. It does not make sense that Israel is agreeing to a ceasefire deal where essentially you're swapping innocent civilian hostages, so essentially 23 alive innocent civilian hostages, or mostly. Are there any soldiers in that one? I think they were also...
I think some of the I pray that some of the girls from the observation post are included.
But and you're swapping, so there might be a couple, but you're swapping mostly innocent civilians who were taken hostage on October 7th for over 1,000 terrorists. So the only way that makes any sense is if there's something we don't know about the deal. So a deal on the deal behind closed doors. And yeah, I guess that's what I was trying to hone in on with Yishai. Yishai is connected to I don't know, he was, I should have asked him. I know he was originally connected to wasn't he part of Ben Gvir's?
Yeah, he worked with it. But look, I think this is always the case with Israel. Okay, anybody who knows isn't talking, and anybody talking doesn't know. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. If with this kind of level of it's all speculation, it's all guesses, it's all wishful thinking on some parts. Look, I don't want to believe that we are doing the worst deal ever. Look, I didn't like the original hostage exchange. I didn't like the pause in fighting, and I wasn't sure that they would go back to fighting properly. I was very, very nervous about that. But from the start, my feeling is the other thing that's going on here. We were definitely forced by Biden and the world to resupply Hamas. We got that first hostage deal under the circumstances where we hadn't been sending fuel in, we hadn't been food. I don't think food and water. They had stockpiles of that. You know what the Gazans, what the Arabs are like. They're preppers. These people will have prepped to kingdom come. They could have lasted. But I think the fuel thing, the fuel to run their generators and to get the air moving in their tunnels, I think we had them by the balls, and that's why they did that first deal back in November 23. But since then, the trucks have just flowed in. I can't believe we're checking them carefully enough. Apparently, some drones have gone in. Apparently, there's all sorts of nonsense that's going on. And now, we can't give up Philadelphia because they'll just dig tunnels and they'll get stuff from Egypt. I in my brain, I know that Bibi will never give up Philadelphia. The only thing that was crazy about the whole way we prosecuted the war was it took us this long to go to Rafah. We had all of the Americans. We had Kamala Harris saying she'd looked at the map and she knew where Rafah was and there was nowhere for the people to go. And lo and behold, 8 hours after we told them to get out of Rafah, they were all gone. Boom, because they knew what was coming. That's the other thing is they know who we are. And when you see, this is, on a wider thing, when you see pictures of the Arabs in Gaza, they're moving, like when they're moving past checkpoints of Israeli soldiers, you know this, they're not scared of our Israeli soldiers. They're not waiting to be shot by snipers. Because this is just a myth put out into the world and carried and spread. You know, it starts with Al Jazeera, but then it's the BBC and Sky News, not Australia, Sky News. You've got a good one there. But all of the rest of the media has just been feeding the world these lies and lies and lies from Hamas direct in Gaza. They've had no, so that's how this genocide thing comes about. You know, nobody has ever been in a position to negotiate the terms under which the genocide against them is ended. No. Anybody suffering from genocide is just waiting for it to end. They are not dictating the terms by which it ends. This is, it's when we see this so clearly now, they're celebrating.
Well, yeah, I've got here terrible. A couple things. I've got a couple things here that I brought on screen. Here's I guess he's a pro-Palestinian guy. He goes, from Gaza ceasefire celebrations, and he's translating what the mostly, kids. And he says, and the translation that he's got.
And look at the name, the Men of Mohammed Daif. Now, he was the military commander that we killed with like a massive amount of bombs. And it took weeks to determine that he had died in a compound that we just dropped like 15 bombs.
Yeah,
put the sword against the sword. We are those are words from the Quran. This is, this is.
This is the reaction. This is the reaction to the announcement of the ceasefire. What do you make of that, Rukshan? And in fact, there's another one here, for example, Bayan.
Yeah, show that one as well.
Yeah, so this one's a Palestinian feminist journalist. She's got her Theo in her bio, her pronouns. She's from the northern Gaza, from the river to the sea, right? And this is somebody that is often touted on the mainstream media, including the ABC here in Australia, as, a legitimate journalist. She's even got the press vest. And so her first reaction, her, was, y'all, I can't believe I survived to witness this day. I legit thought I wouldn't. Next on the list, the day Israel ceases to exist. So this is the reaction from the journalist. That's the reaction from...
And that's problematic, not just to the conflict itself and the people in Israel and Gaza, just the innocent civilians, obviously, but also to the rest of the world, because this is an ongoing issue for all of us. And I know we're not directly impacted in the way that, people in that region are, but at the end of the day, that means the people there that are, having influence, especially when you see children being radicalized at this very young age, especially after the stories that we've heard and the things that have been said and the suffering that people have tried to tell the West that was happening in Gaza. And you see these type of scenes, well, it seems almost opposite to that. And it shows the people who are willing to carry out perhaps another attack ongoing. And it seems like there is another purpose to what they're doing. So for her, that particular journalist, and this is a journalist, so someone who is not, a part of Hamas, let's say, saying that the main goal for her is... I
wouldn't jump to that conclusion.
No. But what I'm saying is that's the perception of the West. That's the perception of the West. But what she is saying is that her objective now is, after all this suffering, this year and a half of war, and all these things that have been said, genocide and this and that, the thing that celebrating the cessation of war is not the thing. It's the continuation of the battle and to the destruction of Israel. And that's problematic, because that tells you this mindset, if it's shared by someone like this, it's shared by the terrorist organization Hamas, and they are more than capable of committing another atrocity, maybe even worse. And the whole thing just starts up all over again. Maybe not in a year, maybe in 10 years' time, but it's saying
that's the thing. Place. The reaction to a ceasefire from the people that have been crying genocide is more war. That's what doesn't make
Yeah,
sense to me in this
problem.
whole story. Is that
Yeah, that's the problem.
you guys? I bet you I could look up any pro-Palestinian account, big account, any of them. Look at them. Look them up today on X. They're all touting this as a Hamas victory. Hamas has won the war. So on one hand, for 15 months, you've been shouting genocide. You've said Israel's doing all these committing all these atrocities against Palestinians. Palestinians can't survive this and that. And then suddenly a ceasefire. Hamas has won the war. The resistance has won the war. You cannot have it both ways. And so if you really want peace, then you should be celebrating this as not a win of the war. You should be celebrating this as now we can finally live together, because October 7 really wasn't worth it, because what did it get Gaza? You're saying you won the war. What did you get? What has Gaza got more today than it did on October 6th of 2023?
Yeah. And who is responsible at the end of the day? Let's say this negotiated deal, the other hostages aren't released, or something like this happens. Who is ultimately responsible for the Hamas side of this negotiation? I know the US and the rest of the world is responsible for Israel in a way, especially the US. But in terms of Hamas, who is actually responsible for them reneging on this? And what are their promises to the rest of the world of de-radicalizing the people of Gaza against this happening in the future again? Like, if those things are not happening, this in no way is a good deal. So that's why, supporting what Trump was originally saying in terms of all hell to pay, all hostages removed, that is really what you need in a situation like this. You can't have this ongoing thing where terrorism is rewarded, because it just happens again. So, it's really yet to be seen what type of ceasefire this really is. And anyone that's looking at this and thinking it's all over and done, I think we're far from it. And like you guys have both discussed, it's very obvious that many people that are looking at this also feel the same way.
Yeah, it's
let's discuss what would actually victory look like from an Israeli point of view, and what can you do to deter these people? As far as I'm concerned, death, they're not interested. They don't care about the death of their people. Okay, they're martyrs. They're glorious martyrs. It doesn't matter how many. So that was never that. And again, just wanton killing of people is just not on Israel's agenda. Destruction of property and to, creating the mess, though not as much of Gaza is rubberized as a lot of it is. But when you see them celebrating, in markets surrounded by buildings. Yeah. They're not all flat. Where are they? Where's that? That's probably Gaza City. There's various parts that have not yet been leveled yet. Now, the other thing is, the only thing they really do care about on an intellectual level is losing land. Now, we've taken, I don't know, according to this deal, it says 700 meters. I don't think that's enough. I think we should have taken at least a kilometer, maybe more. As far as I'm concerned, the only way we could have fought this battle better, we could have fought this battle better in a lot of ways, sort of on the technical side of holding ground and not giving it back and so on. But we should have been absolutely level set clear that each day that goes by, for each hostage that isn't released, we take another 10 meters and another 10 meters. And we just start going probably from the top down, because as far as I'm concerned, northern Gaza should be the Trump golf course resort. We only actually have one golf course in the whole of Israel. This might come as a surprise, because all over the world, Florida, I know in Sydney, the Jews have got the nicest golf course. The Jewish clubs are very famous. But in Israel, there is one golf course in Caesarea, near where Bibi has his sort of weekend home, and that's it. One golf course. There's a country of 10 million people here, 7 or 8 million Jews, and we've only got one golf course. This is crazy. Northern Gaza should be a golf course. I'd hand it over to Trump, but we didn't do that. We didn't say the cost of you doing October the 7th is that Gaza Strip gets smaller. We should have been absolutely upfront, and it should have got smaller every single day that went by with them holding hostages. The cost of a hostage should have been another meter of land. We didn't do that, and now we're going to give back the corridors that we're talking about. They are land, but we are not talking about occupying them indefinitely. Again, another strategic failure. And this is the thing that
let me ask you something. I personally don't like. I know Yushay said it, and that obviously suits his particular ideology. I'm not sure. Like my uncle was from Gaza, but I'm just not sure. Like, why do
Here's
you
my opinion.
Why do you want to annex Gaza? Let them have Gaza. Let them control Gaza, but don't let it be let them have their own state in Gaza. Just don't. But it cannot be a terrorist organization. That's it.
The way Gaza was all a bit of history for everybody, and you'll know this, but very few people understand. Before the disengagement in 2005, Gaza, what happened was that there were communities of Jews living in Gaza, similar to the organization of Jewish towns in Judea, Samaria, West Bank, as it's badly known. So it was a mix, and these Jewish communities they held important points. So they did act as along this corridor that we now call the Netzarim corridor. There was a settlement there, and that kind of cut the strip in half and allowed some control over movement north and south. The main roads were guarded. And again, there was things in the south, and there were settlements along the coast in the north. I don't think we should go back to that kind of mixed up,
a bit like the West Bank,
to be integrated. We shouldn't ever do that. That's just nonsense. But what we should do is just draw a line across the top and say, no, sorry, this is going back to us. And
but why? What do we get out of doing that?
We humiliate them. We get the one thing from them that causes them pain. Killing them doesn't cause them pain. Making them so-called suffer genocide, they don't care. They want that. But taking away land is a humiliation.
When you say they, are you talking about Hamas and anyone that's and even if it's a majority as many polls do, but anyone that sympathizes with Hamas and supports that, or are you talking about it's a deterrent for the Palestinian people in general? I just don't see the value in it. Like, I get what you're trying to say. I from a strategic point of view, definitely the kind of West Bank style setup in Gaza makes no sense. The reason why the West Bank is or Judea and Samaria is a bit more complicated is because there is actual, history, Jewish history. In fact, out of the entire land of Israel,
we have to be in Hebron.
That's the argument from at least a religious perspective. Judea and Samaria is where almost all the history's in. A lot of the other parts of Israel are kind of not that important to,
Tel Aviv,
what's in Tel Aviv, for example. So, and I think humiliating people, people now for generations, it's in itself is not a good enough reason.
You're westernized now, Avi. Your family, this is what 1,000 years of living under Muslim rule did. Muslim rule of Jews is dimification. The only way to do it back, we will never get peace, but we can have quiet if we humiliate them. I'm afraid that
I don't know. I feel like the and this is probably since the Abraham Accords, I can see a better way forward is creating actual real allies like the UAE, creating real allies in the Middle East that firstly...
Are the people our allies or just the leaders? You see, this is it.
The
You
UAE.
can do this. The
The
UAE, but
UAE?
it's yes.
But
Is the
have you
whole
been? Have you been?
population
Have you been
liking
to the
Jews now?
UAE? Have you been to the UAE?
No,
I'll,
no. I'm too
I'll
scared.
tell you now. And the UAE is the one thing that is.
Hold on 1 second. I've got to delay. Sorry, this is the one thing I knew might happen.
We've lost
I think a delivery
our.
came or something.
What is that? Yeah, delivery.
Delivery came.
What
Look,
is
it's
it?
very interesting hearing both your perspectives and listening in on it. The thing is,
Sorry.
We knew this episode you were going to be nice and quiet.
I was going to be quiet this episode. I'll be back, but let's keep going.
Oh, he did say delivery. That was pretty good, Rukshan.
Yeah, delivery.
So the UAE, I'd say the UAE has changed my position on everything, and including the Abraham Accords itself, because I don't necessarily believe that this is applicable to the rest of the Abraham Accord signatories. I think you might be right when it comes to that, like changing the mindset of the people is hard. The UAE specifically, I've got to say that it is, and up until one Jew was recently abducted and killed. But having said that, it wasn't the UAE.
Probably by Iran.
Yeah, it wasn't the UAE, and it wasn't an Emirati. It was outside. It was outside forces, right? So what I'm saying to you is, in the UAE, walking around with a proud Israel, Star of David, today, anywhere in the world, you can't show me a place that I would feel safer to do it. Okay, and I've been there with the Israeli flag tattoos or shirts, and I'm telling you, not only is it genuine that they respected you, they respect you, and they're like, oh, there's a mutual respect there in a people that do recognize success and education. So there is a problem in the Arab world that and in the in the Arab world itself. So you have the UAE, which is like the classy kind of Arabs, which kind of Saudis, and I don't know. I think the Qataris probably also fall in that to a degree, but I don't know the Qatar. I haven't been to Qatar, but the UAE, specifically, and I'm talking about like if you're comparing it within the Arab world, how that kind of see each other. The Palestinians are like the bottom. They're like, even like, I know a lot about. I have Arab family. Like so Arabs are, they've got when they look at Palestinians, like they don't even want to marry. Like Lebanese people don't want to marry Palestinians.
Of course not. But the Palestinians were created that way. The Palestinian Arabs, what the world calls Palestinian Arabs, which are the vast majority of them came from elsewhere. They're from Al-Masri, from Egypt, and from the they were create. What happened? It goes back to this inversion that basically, it's my belief that the Arabs, in conjunction with the Soviet Union, invented this Palestinian national cause.
Sure.
First, they tried to destroy us with the Arab armies, but the side effect of that is you created the worst. Arabs are very hierarchical. It's men above, it's Arab men above women. Right down to the blacks, and even if you convert to Islam, if you're a black African, you're going to be treated really bad.
Sure, but you have class systems other places in the world, but there's certainly a class system there, right? And
I'm grateful, and it's wonderful that the UAE has maybe changed the attitudes and I've got on my desk here now, I've got Muhammad's Quran written by Tommy, the man who I can't name.
But my point being,
it's in this.
But my point being that there is I do see a way. So there is a place where it can work. It just means you need to not shame. What was the word you used? Humiliate them into the, but rather somehow show them that there is so isolate their terrorism. Isolate them to a point where you go, actually, the way to succeed is not by terrorism, but by creating something of yourself. I feel
You
like
will never get anywhere by creating nice conditions for them.
No.
We tried that in Gaza.
I'm
2005.
I'm not saying creating nice conditions for anyone. What I'm saying is finding a way to essentially show them that the only real way forward, unless you want more of that, so it cannot be good.
Look,
it would have been a horrible experience since October 13 or what was it? It was probably 17.
7.
No.
When we started bombing.
When we started, I was there. I can't remember. It was probably 17 or something. I can't remember when we actually
took a while. Yeah,
started
2 or 3 weeks.
So it would be a living nightmare for for the vast majority of people there, besides the people that actually had access to the tunnels. So you need to somehow reach the minds and hearts of people and go to them. There is a viable, better option. And I think if you just cut the top of Gaza for the sake of cutting the top of Gaza, one, as much as I think that Hamas needs to be punished, I agree with the mission statement of this war, which was to get rid of Hamas. And I don't think they should stop until Hamas is not in power, for a bunch of reasons. One, because the threat of them doing it again. Secondly, as a deterrence for any future government to go, mate, if you try this, no matter what it takes, Israel will force a change of leadership, of power. You will lose control. And that's what these guys want. Hamas, it was a generated income from, they get paid essentially via aid and through Qatar and Iran. So for them, their business plan is staying in power. So if they really and truly believe that you will lose power, so Israel has to remove the power, and they got to get all the hostages back. Beyond that, I don't agree. I don't think we should cut any part of Gaza. I think that we should find clever ways to try, maybe fail and fail again and fail again, all while ensuring Hamas is not in power and that they don't have any of our hostages. You got to make it not worth ever break. I don't think Hamas on October 7 believed that we would be now in January of 2025 and the carnage on Gaza. I don't think that they saw that coming. That Yahya Sinwar is dead. That what's his name is dead. That all the leaders of Hamas is dead. The leaders of Hezbollah is dead. Like, I don't think they ever imagined their wildest dream will be here. But I also don't think they imagined having the success that they had on October 7 itself. So, but yeah.
We come back to this thing as what is likely to deter, and killing people doesn't deter them. They're not interested. They don't care how many of their.
Who do you need to deter? You need to deter anyone that has power, and the way to deter everyone that has power is letting them know that if you cross this line, you no longer have that power, and the only way you'll ever have any power is work within this space, but there is a red line. And that's why I do think, I agree with Yishai on that you have to, Netanyahu has to finish, no matter what you think of him, but he has to finish, mission accomplished, the mission that was set out. And that was pretty clear. Like, I don't agree that there was a clear mission in the beginning. It was no Hamas leadership, no Hamas control of Gaza, and all the hostages back. That was the mission statement.
But if they come up and they rename themselves Hamas 2.0 or Sama, or they'll just pick some other name. The number of names of different Islamic terrorist groups, they've got an infinite capacity to pick a word from the Quran that they'll call themselves the Swords of Islam. They'll call themselves whatever they want. But as far as I can see, in all of our wars, the only thing that's ever actually upset the other side was the taking of land. and because they really do not value their own lives. They don't value their lives. They don't value the lives of their children. They don't care. They put them forward to be killed.
What do you reckon, Rukshan?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of had a similar situation in Sri Lanka, a 25-year-old civil war, and there was ceasefires and peace deals and negotiated peace and all these kind of things, and it always kept flaring up. They kept coming back during ceasefires and suicide bombings, and hundreds of thousands of people died because of that. And it wasn't really till the government actually took a stance, and it was very controversial at the time, and a lot of people claimed genocide and all these similar things that you guys are talking about as well. But they actually just went ahead and finished it off and got rid of the terrorist element that was there, the LTTE. And at the start there was a lot of controversy, but over time, as a country, as a people, it's led to a period of great peace and stability without having war. So I see it from that sense that you can't really have a terrorist force, especially even if they're changing their names and you kind of know that this is happening, radicalizing the next generation.
I agree. So the answer to Brian's issue is just no terrorist control in Gaza.
No, exactly. You can't have that terrorist force. You can't have kids walking around with guns. Like if we're still getting images like that out of Gaza as an international community, it has to be condemned. And it has to stop, and whatever pressure that needs to be put on the
no one cares about Western condemnation.
Yeah, I understand it, but
supporting Israel to finish the job. Yeah,
and I think Trump has to give. Again, it might not be popular with people listening to this, and I'm seeing some of the comments. But Trump has, if this happens again, Trump has to give the green light for it to be finished, especially during this period of time.
I think he will. Honestly, my prediction, if I have to make a prediction,
and it's sad that that's the case. It's sad that that's the case because there will be more civilian suffering. But if the other side, like Brian is saying, does not care or value human life, unfortunately, they're putting their people in that situation. And you cannot have a situation where 10 years from now, another incursion happens, they kidnap and take another 20, 30 hostages or more than that next time. And we're back at square one again. It's just ridiculous. You can't continue to live like this. And it's not good for the people of Gaza. It's not good for Palestinians. And it's not good for Israelis. And it's crap for the rest of the world. It has to look at this issue all the time. So I would love to see a proper, complete resolution to this. 2 states, 1 state, I don't really care. And I think as an outsider, that's my perception of it. And I know I'm simplifying it a lot and people might find it offensive, but you can't, it's just crazy. And this just goes on. And, I think maybe I'm just fed up with all of it as well. So it's just ridiculous.
On this note, what I think we'll do quickly is just spend maybe 5 or 10 minutes on platforms where I know Brian's busting to show us the book and tell us a bit of why he has so little faith. But I just don't. I think everyone's getting nuked on mainstream platforms. So guys, what we're going to do quickly for those of you that want to hear what you can't hear on the mainstream platforms, because as much as you think the Jews control everything, I guarantee you, before all these people crying censorship on Twitter because apparently the Jews control everything, and on Facebook, you got to remember, I'm banned off Facebook personally for I'm not allowed to have a Facebook page in my name.
Banned on Facebook,
and demonetized on YouTube, and shadow banned even our Facebook Rebel News pages. Because we've ever discussed these issues. So yes, no, we don't have a special protection. So what we're going to do quickly, we'll spend maybe 10 minutes talking about that on Rumble. So you can go to the Rebel News Rumble channel, or you can go to mine or Rukshan's X. The video will stay live there, or you can go to theopposition.show. And to view it there, you have to, you'll see, go to theopposition.show. That's what you type into the search thing, not .com or anything. So it's theopposition.show, and it'll take you to the landing page in which you click this episode. And to be able to view it and to be able to actually come on to the conversation, you need to actually be a Rebel News Plus member, a subscriber. That helps us cover all the costs at Rebel News. Plus, you get all the access to all the documentaries, including my documentary, upcoming documentary, and all the other great stuff on Rebel News. You can check it out, rebelnewsplus.com. It's a subscription-based thing that also hopefully allows, as we grow the group, we'll have a lot more interactive shows. So that's on Thursday night and Tuesday nights on my Yemeni podcast, which is always way better. The Yemeni Report, that's always way better than any of Rukshan's shows. Guys, so what we're going to do now quickly is Brian, before we move over to the those channels, can Brian and Rukshan, start with Brian, let us know where people can find you.
The main place is Twitter, X now. I was banned for a year for saying, now write it out 100 times or I'll cut your balls off, but I got my account back and under Elon. And I'm on a thing called Hive, but find me from Brian of London on X, and that's the one place. That's my center.
Rukshan, where can people find you?
Yeah, guys, you can find me at The Real Rukshan on X, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and Odyssey. Also at my website, www.realrukshan.com. Thanks for joining in for the Opposition Podcasting, guys. I did get to relax today and just listen in and listen to these perspectives and views. So it was
he was just scared shitless to talk.
No, I mean, there's not much.
He was reading all the hateful comments.
I was reading the comments. Yeah, there's so much hateful comments towards me. And
Rukshan, is it worth it being controlled by the Zionists?
Whatever I say will be clipped, so I'm going to be very careful about how I say.
You don't seem to complain when my Mossad friends send you that paycheck every month.
No comment. No comment.
Can I ask you? I just want to know. I just want to make sure that are you getting paid in shekels or dollars?
I will take rupees. So I've asked for rupees.
Is Aussie Cossack paying you too? All right, guys. So we're going to move on now. So, like I said, Rumble, Rebel News, or X. Mine and Rukshan's X are running the feeds now. And then for the last 5 minutes, we're going to be exclusively only at the Opposition.show. The Opposition.show is running the whole thing. It always is running the whole thing live. And you'll have a chance to log in with us. I will quickly change those, cancel all the main feeds now. So, Brian, are you while we're doing this, can you tell us what you're hearing out there? I know when you sat before, you were telling us you're hearing some.
Well, I was hearing as we started. I was hearing the fighter jets, which they don't fly over Tel Aviv all the time, but they do. I mean, it's much quieter now because we're not bombing the north so much. But apparently, we were bombing Gaza last night quite heavily. So. Yeah, and we hear drones